Today we will see how to reproduce a perfume bottle in glass by using lost wax technique. So we will need the silicone rubber that has to be uh, at high flexibility. We will need, of course, also gloves because we have to protect our hand. Eventually, we will use the acetone for cleaning our tools, and we will need um, a sheet of flexible plastic for making our container for making the silicone and the mold in plaster. Eventually, we will need the tape and a jar for mixing and some plastic cups. So we need to prepare a container for the silicone rubber. Uh, the silicone is a very expensive material, so we don't need to make a lot of silicone, but more or less we need 1 centimeter around our model. So we will place the cylinder around our model, and I will seal with wax. I use wax because sometimes you have to wait a lot for setting the silicone, and the clay can dry and breaks. So now we will prepare the silicone rubber. So in my notes, you will find how to know how much silicone you need, because as I told you before, it's a very expensive material. So if you are making less, preparing less silicone rubber, is fine because you can add after. But if you will prepare a lot, it's a pity because you cannot use that. So for this reason, there are some way for knowing the volume of the silicone more or less we will need. So in this case, I have to put one part and one part by weight, and this is with the silicone I'm using here in Italy. So after that, I will mix. I will mix it, and it's important to mix very well. Okay, we are trying to avoid to have a lot of bubbles, but in any case, we need to be sure that the silicone will be completely mixed very well. So we spend some time careful. We have a lot of time because the silicone usually you have a lot of working time, so it's not a problem. But also, you don't want to produce a lot of bubbles. So it's always in this technique, everything is about compromises, and this is the same. So now you understood why we fixed very well the model, because otherwise we will float with the silicone. So it's important to be sure that the model is fixed very well to the base. After and 6 hours after or more, I can, the silicone is completely set, and I can also clean very easily if some silicone was on my table. So now with my cutter, I will uh, open the flexible sheet, and so I will be able to see my silicone mold. There are several ways of making the negative in silicone. What we are using in this lesson is the most basic way because it's the first project we are making with lost wax and silicone rubber. So we start by cutting our silicone, so we will be able to extract our model from the silicone rubber. So we have to pay attention, but it's not so complicated to, to cut in a regular way. And here we are. The silicone is ready for the wax. I will prepare the silicone for that. I need to close the cut that I made with the tape. For the wax, I use a wax warmer for depilation. You can use also a wax warmer for making candles or for batik. What is important is that we need a thermostat. So usually the melting point of the wax we are using is 70 or 80 Celsius degree, or in Fahrenheit is 180 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's important to have control of the temperature of our wax. For this reason, I am using one of these. And sometimes I can put in the refrigerator, especially in summertime, and after I open and try to have out my bottle. So now is the moment where I can fix if there is something, there is some line or something that I want to repair in the wax. I can remove with some tool, well, metal tool, and also with turpentine. With turpentine, the surface will be more uniform and shiny. And that is a moment to think about what you see in the wax will be reproduced in glass. So I will add a little connection to my model, and so I cut a little bit of wax, more or less 1 centimeter and half inch, and I will fix that on my table. The wax is going around, but this is not a big problem. After I will fix my model to this small platform in wax. And I'm fixing very well everything with wax because I don't want that my model can float when I will add the plaster for making my model. So, but that is very important to fix everything. And I use wax because the wax is waterproof, so it will work. So now I have water and plaster and silica, or a mix for making molds. So as I wrote in my notes, all the plaster that we are using in our models are made by plaster that is useful for copy completely our shape, but also silica floor. The silica floor doesn't change during the firing and make our mix resistant to the heat. So if you are using plaster and silica, the proportion is 1 kilo of water, 1 kilo of silicon flour, and 1 kilo of plaster. If you are using other mixing, you have to follow the instructions. So the idea is that when you mix everything, you wait for maybe 4 minutes, and after you mix, because you don't want to have lumps, but also as usually we don't want to have bubbles, so you are a little delicate in that. And after, we are ready for pour our mix in our container. So now you understand why I wanted to be sure that my model in wax won't move, because otherwise in this moment my model will be able to float in the plaster, and we don't like that, absolutely. we need to go maybe 1 centimeter above our model, and after, when we finish, we can make some vibration on our uh, table. After that, we will wait maybe half hour, and so our mold will be set. In this moment, we can reopen our flexible sheet and finally to see the result of our mold. So now we can remove our mold from the flexible sheet of perspex that we used, and we are ready for going to the steamer. For steaming the wax, I use wallpaper steamer that in my experience is the most safe way of steaming the wax. So the idea is to put the mold over the steam, and I used to cover that with a plastic bag for holding the heat, and after I wait for half hour, 40 minutes. Okay, once when I had steamed my form, I can measure the volume of the water poured into a wet mold. That is very important because if the mold will be dry, you never will know exactly the amount of water we will need for fill our mold. So actually, what I'm making in this video is to wait a jar of water to pour into my mold, and for calculating the amount of water I need for fill it. So without consider this extra 1 centimeter wax that I add. So I am just speaking about the volume of my perfume bottle. And after I, I make the difference of this weight, and I will know exactly how much water is inside my mold. When I will know the weight, the volume of the water, I will multiply by 2.5. That is the specific density of the glass I am using. If you are using crystal, doesn't work, but 2.5 is the density of the most part of the glasses. After that, I will add the 5% because I will use a crucible and I want to be sure that the glass will be enough. And so here we are. I will show you how we made the calculation. And in any case, you will find that in my notes. It is important to know how much glass we will need. Finally, we'll see glass. So we need to cut the billet. So we need the safety glasses, the hammer, the glass cutter, and gloves. And I use billets when I want to have a transparency in my work. So I will cut from in the side that is more shiny, and think about that the weight of each billet is 1.5 kg, so you will have an idea about how much you need to cut. So this is the way as I cut it. So I use the glass cutter, I cut, and after I flip my billet, and with the hammer I open my cutting line. So don't worry, because even if your billets are cut in an irregular way, not geometrical, it's fine because at the end the glass will be fuse, so don't worry at all. In the past, I didn't know how to cut billets, and so I used it to put the billet in a towel, and I used the hammer for destroying the billet, and it was working. So this is, but we need to cut them in whatever, in some way. So after I will clean with a little bit of alcohol, and I will wait in order to know that the amount I am using is fine. And for this project, we will use as a crucible a flower pot. A flower pot in Italian clay. And I say Italian clay because in America there are from Mexico and from Italy, and we need from Italy because are stronger. And what is very important is that the hole has to be at least 2 centimeters, not less. And this is a tip that I'm showing you. It's not absolutely necessary, but I use this technique of adding some shelf primer to my flower pots because in this way I can reuse them. Uh, if you are not adding any shelf primer in the inner and in the back, in the bottom, is fine. But if you are adding that you can reuse them. So now you have your flower pot, your mold, and 2 small pieces of fiber that will support the flower pot in order that we will have some air in between the flower pot and the mold. And after we will put our uh, glasses in our crucible flower pot. And it is. Why I'm using that? Because even if the mold is wet, when the glass will arrive to the bottom of my mold, the bottom will be completely dry.